Hey guys, welcome to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. My name is Sarah. I'm married to Mark, and we have 8 children at home, 5 of them who I am homeschooling. And this is part of the home education series. The reason I'm only homeschooling 5 is because they are the ages that I need to teach in our state. All of our kids are home. Like all 8 of them are here in the house, with only 5 of them being actual students. So if you haven't watched my video that should have come out before this, it talks about our philosophy for homeschooling. So if you haven't watched that, go watch that now. I encourage you to turn this one off and go watch that because it'll make this video make more sense. This is like part 2 of that video. But here we go. On the last video, I talked about speaking with your spouse about what is your philosophy of homeschooling. What are you looking for as an end result of homeschooling your children? For different people, this is going to look different. And it might be that you are taking homeschooling 1 year at a time. I really encourage you to think the process of I am planning to homeschool them all the way through, because the end result is going to help you determine what you're doing today. Again, you might not want to make that decision to homeschool them all the way through, but I think looking at what do I want as an adult is going to help you make these decisions now. Your decision might be like our philosophy for homeschooling is first to point our children to our Creator God and teach them about the world around them through history that points to how God has shown His sovereign hand in all of history. Showing how science works because of the laws of nature, showing how math, because God is a God of order and made these things happen, showing reading so our kids can read the Bible. That is our number one goal in homeschooling. But for someone else, it might be getting your child into Princeton. That end result is going to help us here today. So I wanted to share how we were going to break that down. First, if you are somebody who wants your child, this depends on your philosophy of homeschooling too. I want each of my children to be the best, most considerate adult they can be when they graduate from my homeschooling. And for each of my children, that's going to look different. If you are a family that does not have what you want to call neurodivergence or special needs or things like that, this might look different because you might have the same track for each of your children. But for us, we have our son Josiah is 14. He has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. And just so you know, anything I'm saying on these videos are things I say in front of him. He doesn't happen to be here right now. He's over there. But I'm not talking poorly about him. These are just realities. Josiah may never be able to hold down a job. Part of that is because he has seizures that right now are only somewhat controlled. And if we don't have them under better control, he might not physically be able to hold a job because he would be a liability at work, if that makes sense. We are still working on his seizures. The VNS has helped a ton with the seizures, but it's still not enough that I think, even if he had a simple job like greeting at Walmart, and we still need greeters at Walmart. So that is not talking down to anyone there. I'm saying if he has a job that he doesn't have to like move from one spot and that type of thing, he's just standing there, he still might not be able to do it because of his disability. But Josiah does have skills where he knows how to count back change. So maybe he could work as a cashier if the physical disability doesn't stop him, if that makes sense. So Josiah's job opportunities are going to look different than Samuel, who's the son above him. Samuel is 16. He is looking at different careers right now. And one of the things he's looking at is 911 dispatching. And that's very much, you have to be able to focus on multiple things at one time. You have to do really good at typing. Josiah has one hand and cannot type very well right now. Is that going to change in the future? It could, and we're still working on things, but it just looks different for each child for us. I really encourage you to look. The great part about homeschooling is that you get to look at each child as an individual and get to say, is this what my child needs for their future? Because what one child needs is not necessarily what another child needs. But with this idea of what is your philosophy for homeschooling, it helps you to decide what are we going to use for curriculum and how are we going to set up our classes. So if you're starting square one, and again, you guys are going to want to look at this philosophy on a year-to-year basis to make sure that what you're doing this next year, maybe even every couple months basis, to make sure what you're doing is lining up with your end goal. But I have a 4-year-old who technically does not need to start school this year, but we do some school stuff. If my end goal for him is to be able to get into Princeton and he needs to be able to do trigonometry by the time he gets there, I'm going to have to figure out, okay, so if we do trigonometry, I don't know what comes before that, calculus. So before that's algebra 2 and geometry and algebra 1. So it's going to help me determine like, okay, we need to have him at algebra 1 level by 7th grade so we can get all these other classes in. So that would determine what I do with him now. Because we do not have the philosophy of all of the children need to get to college, we have them, we see how they're learning. Because a child, this is kind of a whole separate video topic, but a child does not need 13 years to learn math. A child needs a dedicated number of hours where they're actually interested in the work. And so if at 4, I can sit him down and drill addition facts into his head, or I could take a more laid back approach and say, here's some counters, let's work this out. Or at 4, I could do I'm going to introduce this topic, and if he's not interested, we're going to set it aside for a couple months and then bring it back out. But depending on what my end goal is going to depend on which of those ways I want to take. This also, your philosophy of homeschooling is going to help determine that unschooling versus like public school at home mentality of, are we sitting down from 8 to 2 with school books, or am I letting my child be more self-directed in when they're ready to learn? That's a whole different video. But the idea that we, depending what your end goal is going to help you decide what curriculum you want to use, whether it's very educationally advanced. Some people really like, you okay? Some people really like the mastery approach, where you continue working on addition until you have it down, where some people like more of the spiral approach, which is we introduce addition and we introduce time and we introduce money and we kind of keep spiraling around, adding a little more information each time. Either way is fine. But again, the end goal is going to help you decide this. And so looking at what curriculum you want. As Christian homeschoolers, we choose mostly Christian materials. So I would go look at a company. Let's say I wanted Samuel to learn bookkeeping. I'm more likely to go look at the Christian companies first to see if they have the bookkeeping classes that I'm looking for before I go to a secular company. But if your idea is, I want my child to know bookkeeping because they're planning to start their own business, and someone who is a good mentor to you has recommended this other bookkeeping class, it might not have to do with whether it's a Christian or secular class. It has to do with, we have experience with this and somebody who can help him work through it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to say if that makes sense a lot, probably, because I don't want people to think I necessarily have all the information for you. And my mind is kind of scattered as I'm thinking through all these things for my own children too, because each of my children is different and the end goal of wanting them to know about God is the same, but the end goal of what it looks like to be a productive member of society is different for each one of my children. Closer for some than others. And so looking at what curriculum you're going to decide is based on that philosophy. How you're going to set up your days is based on that philosophy. Because if you're looking for a child who's going to be able to do Princeton and you want them to be able to know what it's like sitting in a classroom setting and listening to lectures, you're going to pick different types of curriculum than somebody who's more laid back in that approach. And kids who are unschooled can go on and do incredibly well at Princeton. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying what your goal is for them and how you want to get them there. If you have, if you're doing more of the school at home approach, wanting them to get into Princeton, you're probably going to be more focused on having a start time and an end time and deadlines and that type of thing. Where if you're more of the unschooling approach, you're going to say, oh, my child really doesn't catch on to reading at 5, so we're going to try it again at 6, instead of we're going to do a phonics lesson every day. And again, each of these is different. And you have to discuss with your spouse what works for your family and your needs. As a wife, your spouse should be a huge part of the school making decisions. I know there's a lot of husbands that kind of just step back and let their wives do that, but I know some men who don't think their wife takes school seriously enough because they haven't expressed that to their wife. And you can do what you want with your schedule. I'm just saying, like, if a husband feels like his child needs to be able to complete this grade of math by this time, then you need to figure out how to make that work in your schedule. So this philosophy, along with like, how am I going to set up my year, is also going to help you determine your day-to-day schooling. Because for us, the idea of wanting them to know God means that Bible is the priority in my day. And if math doesn't get done today because the whole day falls apart, my husband is okay with knowing math didn't happen because we got the most important thing that we wanted done. This works for all students. If you have a child who wants to be a doctor, you're going to put a bigger focus on their science class than you're going to put on their art class. Not that art's not important, not that you don't want your child to know art, but if you're like, this is a really busy week and we only have half the time to devote to our schooling because so-and-so needs surgery or whatever, you're going to decide which classes are the most important. So for us, I know that Bible is our most important goal for our children. And so I'm going to make sure that they have Bible time. Also for us, reading and math are very important at the child's level. So I have a 6-year-old who, actually, he's not a good example. So let's say that Josiah, can you come up? Let's say that Gideon, who's 4, really starts to want to learn to read. Well, I like to run with that. So we're going to make sure that he's getting a reading lesson every day if that's his want to and he's understanding it and all of those. Yeah, that's you. You want to come say hi? You got a piece of wood? So that would be an important part for me. If that meant I had to tell one of the older kids, hey, we're not doing the read aloud today, please pick a book and go sit down and read that for your reading time instead of the read aloud, that would be what was necessary at that point. If your child is studying for an important math test and you know that you are only going to be in the house for 2 hours tomorrow because of doctor's appointments, you're going to make sure their math gets done over their phys ed. So this philosophy helps you when you have those days where everything else just messes up. So for us, my most important goal is that the children get their Bible time. And that is right for us right after breakfast so that it makes sure that it happens. And even if we have to push it off for some reason, that would be the most important thing if we came back home. So let's say, well, yesterday morning, we started our Bible time late because Josiah was not feeling well. So therefore, some people got up a little bit later, Josiah, Chores got done a little bit later and Bible time started a little bit later, but we still started with Bible because it was most important. It wasn't, oh, Bible ran into math time, so let's just stop Bible and do math. No, we're going to make sure Bible gets done. Math will be the next subject that we do. So it helps you organize your day on a regular basis of, if I have 3 hours of work planned out, we'll do another video on how much schooling each kid needs time-wise. But let's say you have 3 hours of work planned out. Start with the most important subjects so that if those, let's say the math lesson takes longer than you thought it was going to be and something needs to fall off the end here, it's the thing that is not pushing you towards your end goal. So I hope this makes sense. If you have things to add to this video that I might not have thoroughly said, or you have questions about what I said, please put them in the comments down below, and we'll see you on the next video in the homeschooling series.